What you described has been a really tumultuous 5 years, and 2022 has had really, ominous economic news: 40-year high inflation, a looming recession, interest rate hikes from the Fed. Does that impact the crypto market immediately, or is it a delayed reaction?
It's a good question. Typically, because especially when institutional money really entered the space starting in August 2020 and kind of carried on throughout COVID, uh, that money, as much as it was celebrated by crypto enthusiasts because all prices started to go up and to the right, it forced crypto to trade much like tech stocks. They use the same frameworks, the same approaches, and essentially put Bitcoin into the same buckets as the risky tech stocks. If you ever look at kind of the correlations between Bitcoin and tech stocks back in like the ICO bust in 2018 and 2022, it's night and day. In 2018, it was pretty uncorrelated. In 2022, it's very highly correlated. So when you do see changes from the Fed, stocks and Bitcoin tend to move in a similar direction. Uh, and I think yesterday even was just another example of that. I mean, Bitcoin surged when even though rates got raised again by 25 basis points, because I think for one that was relatively well telegraphed, but two, I think maybe it's a bit of hopium that Fed watchers are getting a little bit more optimistic that central banks around the world are going to be able to safely land this economy without plunging us into a recession, or at least a very long one. So you do see those movements. I think a more important question might be like, what is the long-term impact of all that? And for that, it's really hard to tell because I mean, let's be honest, a lot of Fed watchers are wrong. It's very hard to predict what's going to happen next with inflation, especially with an economy as complex as ours. We're still trying to unwind supply chain gluts. We have a super tight labor market. Inflation is still high, and I mean, how many people were talking about inflation being transitory, and it turned out to be much more persistent than other people thought. So, I mean, short term, yes, Bitcoin does tend to react in a similar direction to other risky assets when it comes to the Fed, but longer term, it's hard to know for sure.